Welcome, and allow the world outside to gently fade away. Let the sounds of your room, the weight of the day, and the endless stream of thoughts begin to soften, to recede into a quiet, distant murmur. Tonight, we are not here. We are not in our beds, in our homes, under our familiar sky. Tonight, we are travelers. We are voyagers on a sea of cosmic dust, sailing toward shores of unimaginable wonder. Our vessel is our imagination, and our destination lies in the quiet, speculative realms of science, where we ask a simple yet profound question. What would life be like elsewhere as you settle in? As your breathing deepens and slows, let your mind drift away from the earth you know. Let it float up past the thin veil of our atmosphere, past the silent, watchful moon, and out into the grand, silent theater of the cosmos. Here, in the velvet blackness, countless points of light glitter, and we know now, with a certainty that was once the domain of dreams, that many of these lights are not just stars, but suns. Suns with their own families of worlds, their own planets, each a potential stage for the grand play of life. But the stages we will visit tonight are not like our own. They are alien in the truest sense of the word. We will journey to a world locked in a silent, eternal dance with its star, a planet where one side is forever scorched in unending daylight, and the other is frozen in a perpetual, star-dusted night. And then we will travel further still to a world that knows no single dawn, a planet that orbits not one, but two suns, painting its landscapes in the light of a constant, shifting double sunrise. How would life arise in such places? How would it adapt, evolve, and perceive a reality so fundamentally different from our own? These are the questions we will explore, not with urgency, but with a gentle, wandering curiosity. This is not a lecture, but a meditation, a journey of thought designed to quiet the mind and open the door to wonder, a story told to the rhythm of your own slow, steady breath. So close your eyes if you haven't already. Feel the gentle pull of relaxation as we begin our journey into the science of what could be, into the astrobiology of the strange and the beautiful, and into the deep, restorative peace of sleep. Our first port of call is a world that has forgotten how to spin. Imagine a planet, perhaps similar in size to our own Earth, orbiting a small, calm, red dwarf star. These stars are the most common in our galaxy, the quiet, long-lived embers of the cosmos. Because this planet is so close to its faint sun to receive enough warmth for liquid water, the star's immense gravity has snared it, locking it into a state we call tidal locking. Just as our moon always shows the same face to Earth, this world shows the same face to its sun. Forever. This creates a planet of two extremes, a world cleaved in half by light and shadow. One hemisphere, the day side, is trapped in an eternal afternoon. The sun never moves, never sets. It hangs motionless in the sky, a crimson eye that endlessly pours heat and radiation onto the surface below. The other hemisphere, the night side, is in a state of perpetual darkness. The sun is never seen. It is a land of unending night, where the only light comes from the distant, indifferent shimmer of faraway stars and galaxies. And between these two impossible realms lies a sliver of hope, a ribbon of twilight that wraps around the planet. This is the Terminator Zone, a region of permanent dawn or dusk, where the red sun hovers eternally at the horizon. Let us first drift down to the surface of the dark side, the hemisphere of endless night. At first glance, it appears desolate, a frozen wasteland under a blanket of stars more brilliant than any you have ever seen from Earth. The air is thin and bitterly cold, but life, as we know from the deepest trenches of our own oceans and the darkest caves of our world, is tenacious. It does not always need the direct kiss of sunlight to thrive. Here, in the deep dark, life might not look up but down. Imagine vast, sprawling ecosystems that draw their energy not from a sun, but from the planet's own internal heat. Geothermal vents, like the hydrothermal vents on Earth's ocean floors, could pepper the landscape, spewing out a rich soup of minerals and heat from the planet's molten core. Around these oases of warmth, a strange and wonderful biology could flourish. Instead of photosynthesis, the foundation of this food web would be chemosynthesis. Microbes, bacteria, and archaea would be the primary producers, metabolizing sulfur compounds, methane, or hydrogen to create energy. They would be the invisible architects of a world without light. From these microbial mats, a whole ecosystem could arise. Picture vast, slow-growing forests, not of trees, but of something akin to fungi or a lichen. They wouldn't be green, for there is no sunlight to capture. Instead, they might be pale, white, or perhaps shimmer with a faint, ghostly bioluminescence. This light would not be for seeing, not in the way we understand it, but for communication, for attracting mates, or for luring prey in the absolute blackness. Imagine walking through one of these forests. The ground beneath your feet is soft, spongy with microbial life. Towering structures, like colossal mushrooms, rise up around you, their caps glowing with a soft, pulsing blue or green light. The air is still and silent, save for a faint hum of geological activity from deep within the planet. What kind of animals would inhabit this glowing forest? They would be creatures of patience and subtlety. Vision, as we know it, would be useless here. Instead, senses we consider secondary would become paramount. Perhaps creatures navigate using a form of echolocation, emitting high-frequency clicks and reading the echoes that bounce back from the glowing fungal stalks. Or maybe they sense the world through vibrations in the ground, feeling the slow, deliberate movements of other inhabitants. Some might be blind, with large, sensitive antennae or tendrils that taste the air in the ground, searching for the chemical trails of food. Others might have evolved to see in the infrared spectrum, perceiving the world not as a landscape of light and shadow, but as a tapestry of heat and cold. They would see the warm plumes of the geothermal vents, the faint heat signature of other living things, a world painted in gradients of temperature. Predation here would be a slow, deliberate dance. A hunter might lie in wait for days, perfectly camouflaged against the pale ground, sensing the approach of its prey through minute changes in air pressure or temperature. There would be no frantic chases, only silent, patient ambushes in the glowing twilight of the forest floor. The bioluminescence itself could become a weapon or shield. A creature, when threatened, might flash a brilliant, disorienting pattern of lights. Another might mimic the gentle glow of a harmless plant to lure in the unsuspecting. An entire language of light could exist here, a silent, beautiful conversation of pulses, colors, and waves played out in the unending night. Life would be slow, its metabolism tuned to conserve energy in a world where it is a precious commodity, drawn up from the planet's core rather than rained down from the sky. The cycles of life would not be governed by day and night, but perhaps by the slow, periodic pulses of geothermal activity or the subtle gravitational tides of a distant moon. It is a world of deep, profound silence, a world of soft light and slow time, a world that has found a way to live, to thrive, in the complete and utter absence of sun. Now, let us leave the silent, glowing forests of the night side and drift across the planet towards the terminator, the ring of eternal twilight. As we travel, the starfield above begins to pale, and a deep, permanent crimson glow appears on the horizon. This is the twilight zone, perhaps the most habitable region on this strange world. Here, the sun is forever rising or forever setting, depending on your perspective. It hangs at the edge of the world, a dim, red orb that casts long, dramatic shadows across the landscape. The temperature here is more moderate, a delicate balance between the searing heat of the day side and the cryogenic cold of the night side. But this zone would not be calm. The immense temperature difference between the two hemispheres would create powerful, relentless winds, a permanent jet stream flowing from the hot side to the cold side at high altitudes, and surface winds that could shape the very geology of the planet. Any life here would have to be resilient to these constant gales. Plants, or their alien equivalents, might grow low to the ground, like mosses or creeping vines, with deep, strong root systems to anchor them against the wind. They might have tough, leathery leaves to prevent moisture from being stripped away by the dry air. And here, for the first time on our journey, we might see photosynthesis, but it would be a different kind of photosynthesis. Red dwarf stars emit most of their light in the red and infrared parts of the spectrum. The chlorophyll that makes Earth's plants green is optimized for our yellow-white sun. Here, plants would need pigments that are far more efficient at capturing these lower energy photons. As a result, the foliage might not be green at all. It could be a deep, dark purple, almost black, to absorb as much of the available light as possible. Imagine a landscape of rolling, black hills covered in a soft, velvety carpet of dark, wind-swept vegetation, all under a sky of permanent, dusky red. Animals in the Terminator Zone would also be shaped by the wind and the dim, directional light. They might be streamlined, built to withstand the constant buffeting of the gales. Perhaps they live in burrows or within networks of caves to escape the worst of the weather. With the sun always in the same position, navigation would be simple. But it would also mean that shadows are permanent fixtures of the landscape. A creature could spend its entire life in the shadow of a single, large rock formation. This could create unique ecological niches, with shadow-dwelling species that rarely, if ever, venture into the direct, dim light of the red sun. The constant wind could be used for dispersal. Plants might release seeds or spores that are carried for thousands of miles, circling the globe in the twilight zone. Flying creatures, if they could evolve in such winds, might be more like gliders, using the powerful air currents to travel vast distances with minimal effort. This is a world of constancy. The light is always the same. The wind is always blowing. The shadows never move. Life here would be adapted to a profound monotony, a world without the rhythm of day and night, a world of eternal, windy twilight. Finally, with a sense of caution, we venture into the dayside, the hemisphere of eternal light. Here, the red sun is no longer a gentle orb on the horizon, but a blazing furnace that hangs directly overhead, motionless and unrelenting. The surface is likely a scorched, arid desert. Any liquid water would have long since boiled away into the atmosphere, perhaps to be carried by the winds of the night side, where it would freeze and fall as snow, creating vast glaciers that might, over geological time, flow back towards the twilight zone. Life on the surface seems impossible. The constant bombardment of stellar radiation, with no night to offer a period of repair, will be lethal to any biology we can conceive of. But life is ingenious. Perhaps it exists beneath the surface, in deep caves or underground oceans, shielded from the harsh radiation. Or maybe, just maybe, life has found a way to cope. Imagine plants that have evolved highly reflective, metallic-looking leaves that bounce most of the harmful radiation back into space. Or perhaps they have a form of biological sunscreen, pigments that absorb the high-energy particles. They might have incredibly efficient cooling systems, circulating fluid through their structures to dissipate the immense heat. Animals, too, would need extreme adaptations. They might be nocturnal, in a world without night, meaning they live in shadows or underground and only come out to forage in the slightly cooler temperatures of a subjective evening, a cycle dictated by an internal clock rather than an external one. Perhaps life here is silicon-based, more resilient to high temperatures than the carbon-based life we know. Creatures with crystalline shells that glitter under the crimson sun, moving slowly across plains of red sand. The dayside is a world of brutal, unchanging energy. A challenge. But if there is one lesson astrobiology teaches us, it is to never underestimate the tenacity of life. A tidally locked world is a planet of three faces: the dark, the twilight, and the light. Each a unique and extreme environment, each a potential home for a biology so alien it would challenge our very definition of life. It is a quiet, stable, and yet profoundly strange place to call home. As you absorb these images, let your mind relax into the vastness of the concept. A world split in two, a glowing, silent forest, a windy, black tapestry twilight, a scorched, glittering desert. These are not fantasies, but plausible realities born from the simple laws of gravity and light, playing out on a cosmic scale. And as you drift, let's travel onward, leaving this world of eternal twilight behind and setting a course for an even more complex, even more dazzling system. Our next destination is a planet bathed in the light of two suns. The idea of a planet with two suns has long been a staple of science fiction, most famously depicted as the desert world of Tatooine in Star Wars. But this is not fiction. Binary star systems, where two stars orbit a common center of mass, are incredibly common in our galaxy. In fact, they may outnumber single-star systems like our own, and we're discovering planets within these systems. These worlds come in two main flavors. The first is a circumbinary planet, or a P-type orbit, where the planet orbits far out around both stars, as if they were a single central point of light. The second is a non-circumbinary planet, or S-type orbit, where the planet orbits just one of the stars, with the second, more distant star acting as a secondary sun in its sky. Let us imagine ourselves on a circumbinary world, a planet orbiting the center of a binary pair. Perhaps one star is a large, yellow sun, much like our own. The other is a smaller, hotter, blue-white star. They orbit each other in a graceful cosmic waltz. From the surface of our planet, the sky would be a spectacle of constant change. There would be two suns, rising and setting, sometimes close together, sometimes on opposite sides of the sky. The length of a day will be complex. There would be periods when both suns are in the sky, casting two shadows for every object, one sharp and gray, the other softer and tinged with blue. The light would be brilliant, a mix of warm yellow and cool blue, creating an ethereal, otherworldly illumination. Then, one sun would set, leaving the other to dominate the sky for a time, before it too dips below the horizon, plunging the world into a brief, true night. Or perhaps, depending on the season and the orientation of the stars, there would be no true night at all, with one sun rising just as the other is setting. How would life adapt to such a celestial ballet? Let's start with the plants. Photosynthesis would be a complex affair. The two suns would emit different spectrums of light. The yellow sun would be rich in green and yellow light, while the blue sun would pour out blue and ultraviolet radiation. A plant would need to be a master of light harvesting. Perhaps it would evolve two different types of photosynthetic pigments, one tuned to each star. This could result in foliage of a very dark, almost black color, to absorb energy across the entire visible spectrum. Or maybe plants would be iridescent, their leaves shimmering with different colors as they captured different wavelengths of light. Imagine a forest where the leaves are like oil on water, shifting from deep purple to shimmering, green to electric blue as you move. Plants might also need to be mobile in a sense. They might have the ability to turn their leaves or even their entire bodies to track the brighter of the two suns across the sky, a process called heliotropism, but on a far more complex level than we see on Earth. The very concept of seasons would be redefined. Instead of being determined by a planet's axial tilt, the seasons could be governed by the dance of the two stars. There might be a double summer when the planet's orbit brings it closest to both stars simultaneously, a period of intense heat and light. This could be followed by a mild season as the stars move apart in the sky, and then a cool season when they're on opposite sides of the planet's orbit. Life would have to evolve to survive these dramatic swings in energy. Animals might hibernate or enter a state of dormancy during the harshest seasons. Migratory patterns would be incredibly complex, as creatures follow the shifting zones of comfortable temperature and light around the planet. And what the animal senses, circadian rhythms, the internal clocks that govern the sleep-wake cycles of life on Earth, would be thrown into chaos. How do you sleep when there might not be a regular night? Perhaps animals would evolve a dual cycle rhythm, with a short period of rest after each sunset. Or maybe they would be cathemeral, active in short bursts throughout the complex day. Vision would have to adapt to the strange lighting conditions. The dual shadows could be confusing for predators and prey alike. A hunter would need a brain capable of processing the complex visual information to distinguish a creature from its two overlapping shadows. Some animals might evolve compound eyes, better able to handle the varying intensity and color of the light. The gravitational environment would also be more complex. The pull of two stars would create intricate tidal forces, not just on any oceans, but on the very crust of the planet itself, potentially leading to increased geological activity. Life would need to be resilient, adaptable, and opportunistic. Now let's shift our perspective to the other type of binary world, one in an S-type orbit. Here, our planet orbits one star, the primary, while the second star is a distant companion. Imagine a world much like Earth, orbiting a sun much like our own, but in its sky, sometimes visible during the day, sometimes a brilliant beacon in the night, is a second, smaller sun. It might be a distant red dwarf, appearing as a small, intensely red star, far brighter than Venus in our sky. Or it could be a brilliant blue giant, a dazzling diamond on black velvet. During the day, the primary sun would dominate, but the second sun would still be there, a second source of light and warmth, however faint. This would subtly alter the climate, making the planet warmer than it would otherwise be. At night, the world would rarely be truly dark. When the primary sun sets, the night sun might still be high in the sky, casting the landscape in a soft, ethereal glow. True darkness would only come for a few hours when both suns are below the horizon. This would have a profound impact on nocturnal life. Predators that rely on the deep dark of night to hunt would struggle. Prey animals would have fewer places to hide. Perhaps nocturnal creatures would evolve incredible camouflage or become masters of stealth to survive in this world of perpetual twilight. The color of the night sun would also be crucial. If it were a red dwarf, the night would be bathed in a deep red glow. Nocturnal animals might evolve eyes that are highly sensitive to this end of the spectrum. If the night sun were blue, the landscape would be painted in shades of silver and blue, a world of moonlight on steroids. The cycles of life will be tied to this dual illumination. Some plants might even evolve a two-stage photosynthetic process, using the bright light of the primary sun during the day, and then continuing to produce a small amount of energy under the faint light of the second sun at night. This could allow for incredibly rapid growth. The presence of a second star would also affect the stability of the planetary system. The gravitational influence of the companion star could perturb the orbits of other planets, asteroids, and comets, potentially leading to a higher rate of impacts on our world. Life would need to be resilient not just to the environment, but to cosmic catastrophe. Living on a planet with two suns, whether they are close partners or a dominant star with a distant companion, would mean living under a sky of constant wonder. Imagine the mythology, the art, the philosophy that would arise in a culture that grew up under two suns. Their concept of time, of divinity, of their place in the cosmos will be fundamentally shaped by the celestial dance above them. They would never know the simple solitude of a single star. Their sky would be a constant reminder of the complexity and the grandeur of the universe. As we ponder these possibilities, feel your own mind settling into a state of calm acceptance. The universe is not obligated to conform to our expectations. It is wilder, stranger, and more beautiful than we can possibly imagine. Life, if it exists on these worlds, would be a testament to the power of adaptation. It would find a way. On a world of eternal night, it would harness the planet's inner fire. In a realm of endless twilight, it would bow to the wind. Under a sky of two suns, it would learn to dance to a complex rhythm of light and shadow. Each of these worlds, born from scientific possibility, offers a unique solution to the puzzle of existence. And as you lie here on the cusp of sleep, you can feel a connection to this cosmic tenacity. The same fundamental forces that shape these alien worlds are at work within you. The atoms that make up your body were forged in the heart of a star long ago. The water that flows through you is a cosmic traveler, perhaps as old as the solar system itself. You are a part of this grand, unfolding story. So let these images of strange suns and glowing forests carry you now into your own inner world of dreams. Let the gentle curiosity about what lies beyond our world quiet the noise of your own thoughts. There is a deep peace in contemplating the vastness of space and time, a peace that comes from understanding our own small but precious place within it all. The universe is filled with endless possibilities, and tonight you have visited just a few. Allow the narrative to dissolve now, leaving only the feelings of wonder, of peace, and of profound relaxation. Your breathing is slow and deep. Your body is heavy and comfortable. Your mind is quiet and still. The journey is over for tonight. It is time to rest. Time is sleep. And in your dreams, perhaps you will walk through a forest of glowing fungi, or stand on a hill and watch two suns set over a shimmering alien can see. Sleep now. Sleep deeply. And let the quiet wonder of the cosmos be your lullaby. The science of astrobiology is, at its core, a science of imagination disciplined by physics, chemistry, and biology. It asks us to take what we know about life on our own planet and extrapolate, to stretch our understanding to its absolute limits. Consider for a moment the very building blocks. We are carbon-based life forms, using water as a solvent. This is what we know, what we are. But could it be different? On a world far hotter than Earth, perhaps under the constant gaze of a close orbiting sun, life might not use carbon, but silicon. Silicon can form complex chains, much like carbon, and is far more resistant to heat. Imagine creatures with crystalline exoskeletons, their biology running on a slower, more deliberate time scale, their thoughts, if they have them, as patient as the geological ages. Their world would be one of molten rock and silicate sands, and they would see it as a paradise, perfectly suited to their form. And water, our precious solvent, is not the only option. In the frigid outer reaches of a solar system, on a moon warmed by the tidal flexing of a gas, giant liquid methane or ethane could take its place. Life there would be incredibly slow, its chemical reactions unfolding at a glacial pace in the cryogenic temperatures. It would be a life of profound patience, where generations could span millennia. These are the outer frontiers of our thinking, the very edge of what we can conceive. And it all begins with the light from a star, or the lack thereof. Let's return for a moment to our tidally locked world, to the hemisphere of endless night. We imagine life huddled around geothermal vents, but what if the planet had a thick atmosphere, one capable of transporting heat from the dayside? Powerful winds would howl in the upper atmosphere, carrying warmth from the sunlit hemisphere to the dark side. This could create a more tempered environment on the night side, preventing it from becoming a solid ball of ice. In this scenario, a vast, planet-girdling ocean could remain liquid. Life in this ocean would be strange indeed, with no light penetrating the depths. The entire ecosystem would be based on chemosynthesis or on the marine snow of organic matter carried by current from the twilight zone. Imagine colossal, slow-moving filter feeders, larger than any whale on Earth, drifting silently through the black water, sifting for nutrients. Predators might hunt with electricity, generating powerful shocks to stun their prey, their forms unseen in the crushing darkness. Bioluminescence would be the only visual language, a silent, flickering code in the deep. Entire continents of glowing bacteria could exist on the seafloor, creating eerie, bottom-lit landscapes. The pressure would be immense, the silence absolute. It would be a world of leviathans and living light, an ecosystem running on a completely different engine from our own. Now, let's reconsider the day side. We painted it as a scorched desert, but what if the planet had thick clouds? A permanent planet-wide cloud cover could reflect much of the star's energy back into space, keeping the surface temperature at a more manageable level. The light on the surface would be diffuse, a bright, featureless white glare. Photosynthesis could happen, but it would be a competition for the filtered light. Plants might grow to incredible heights, like the skyscrapers of a biological city, each one vying for a share of the perpetual, indirect sunlight. With no night for dew to form, life would have to be incredibly efficient at conserving water. Perhaps animals would have closed circulatory systems that recycle almost all of their moisture, never needing to drink. They might get their water from the strange, towering plants they consume. The world would be humid, hot, and bright, a global greenhouse under a sun that never sets. The concept of sleep would be entirely alien. Life might have evolved to rest one half of its brain at a time, allowing it to remain perpetually vigilant in a world with no place to hide from the light. And in a world of two suns, the complexities multiply. Imagine a planet in a highly elliptical orbit around a binary pair. For part of its year, it would be close to the stars, experiencing an intense, fiery summer. Then, it would swing far out into the cold darkness of space for a long, harsh winter. Life would have to be adapted to these violent extremes. Perhaps the dominant life forms spend the winter in a state of suspended animation, frozen solid, only to thaw and spring to life during the brief, frantic summer. Their entire life cycle of birth, reproduction, and death might take place in a few short, brilliant weeks. Or consider the color of the light. If one star is a red giant and the other a blue dwarf, the quality of light would shift dramatically throughout the day. A plant would need to be a chromatic generalist, able to use whatever photons are available. An animal's camouflage would need to work in both reddish and bluish light, perhaps by having a patterned skin that breaks up its outline in both color schemes. The shadows would not only be double, but they would change color. A creature's shadow might be a soft red in the morning, a deep purple at midday when both suns are high, and a stark blue in the evening. This would have a profound effect on the evolution of vision and predator-prey dynamics. The sky itself would be a source of constant information. An intelligent species on such a world might develop astronomy far earlier than we did. The complex, predictable, yet ever-changing dance of their two suns would be a celestial clock of incredible precision, inviting observation and interpretation. Their myths would not speak of sun god, but of the twin gods, the warring brothers, or the loving partners who governed their world. These are the kinds of details that transform a scientific concept into a living, breathing world. And as you allow these details to wash over you, feel the gentle rhythm of your own world, the simple, reliable cycle of one day and one night. There is a deep, primal comfort in this rhythm. It is the beat to which all life on Earth has evolved. Our bodies are tuned to it, our minds expect it, and as night falls, our bodies know that it is time for rest, for repair, for the quiet, essential work that happens in the darkness. The glymphatic system in your brain is becoming more active as you drift towards sleep. A microscopic cleaning crew that flushes out the metabolic waste products that have accumulated during the day. It is a process that happens most efficiently in the deep stages of sleep, a vital nightly renewal. In a way, Your brain is like the night side of a tidally locked planet, a place of darkness where essential, hidden processes take place. While your conscious mind rests, your brain is busy consolidating memories, repairing cellular damage, and preparing you for the coming day. It is a beautiful biological synchronicity, a dance between activity and rest that is essential for life. So as you continue to relax, as you feel the gentle pull of sleep becoming stronger, honor this ancient rhythm. Give yourself permission to let go completely. Let go of the day's worries. Let go of the need to think, to plan, to do. There is nothing for you to do right now but to rest, to allow the quiet, intelligent processes of your body to take over, to sink into the deep, restorative darkness. The universe will continue its grand, silent dance without your supervision. The stars will continue to burn. The planets will continue to orbit. And somewhere, on a world we can only imagine, a strange, black plant may be turning its leaves to catch the light of two suns. But for you now, all that matters is the simple, profound peace of this moment, the feeling of your breath moving in and out, the comfort of your bed, the slow, inevitable, and welcome descent into sleep. Let the last vestiges of thought dissolve into the vast, quiet space of your mind. Good night. For those whose minds still wander, let us journey on. Let us leave the quiet, restorative darkness of the night side and travel towards the light. On a tidally locked world, this is not a journey through time, but a journey through space. We move across a landscape where the ground beneath our feet is the only thing that changes, while the star above remains fixed in the sky, a permanent, unblinking eye. We are heading toward a region known to scientists as the Terminator Zone, or more poetically, the Twilight Belt. This is the ring of eternal dawn or dusk that encircles the planet, a place where the sun, or suns, hang forever on the horizon. It is a world of impossibly long shadows, a landscape painted in the permanent, bruised colors of sunset that never ends. Life here would exist in a state of perpetual liminality. The temperature is moderated by the gentle, angled light, creating a potentially habitable zone between the searing heat of the day side and the cryogenic cold of the night side. But this is no paradise. The immense temperature difference between the two hemispheres would generate colossal winds, a constant, howling gale flowing from the hot side to the cold. Any life that evolves here must be anchored, resilient, and built for the storm. Imagine forests of low-lying, flexible plants clinging to the ground like massive, leathery corals, their forms sculpted by the ceaseless wind. They would not need to track a moving sun, so their photosynthetic surfaces could be permanently oriented towards the fixed point of light, great, dark leaves fanned out to catch every precious, low-angle photon. The creatures that inhabit this twilight realm would be equally alien, without a day-night cycle. The very concept of a circadian rhythm would be meaningless. Their lives would be governed by other pulses, perhaps the ebb and flow of the wind or the cycles of a nearby moon. Vision would be highly specialized, adapted for a world of low light and extreme contrast. where everything is either in silhouette or bathed in a ruddy glow. Perhaps they would evolve to rely more heavily on other senses, sensing the vibrations in the ground to detect prey, or using a form of echolocation that will be carried for miles on the constant wind. They might live in burrows or in the lee of great rock formations, hunkered down against the gale, their entire existence a testament to the tenacity of life in the face of environmental extremes. This is a world of stability, but a harsh, unforgiving stability. Now let us complicate the sky. Let us introduce a second sun. Imagine a planet in a circumbinary orbit, a world that circles not one, but two stars. The celestial mechanics of such a system are a dance of breathtaking complexity. The planet's orbit might be a gentle, wide circle around a distant pair of stars, or it could be a chaotic, weaving path, an intricate waltz with its two stellar partners. The light and heat it receives would be anything but constant. There would be periods where both suns are in the sky, bathing the world in a brilliant, overlapping light. Then, one sun might set while the other remains, casting a different colored light across the landscape. There could even be periods of true night, when the planet's orbit carries it to a point where both suns are eclipsed by each other or are below the horizon. The simple, reliable rhythm of Earth's day and night is replaced by a complex, unpredictable symphony of light, color, and heat. The biology of such a world would have to be incredibly adaptable. Plants might evolve a form of dual-purpose photosynthesis, with different pigments optimized to absorb the light from each distinct star. Perhaps one sun is a large, yellow star like our own, while the other is a smaller, cooler red dwarf. A plant on this world might have leaves that are green on one side to capture the yellow light, and a deep, near black red on the other to soak up the infrared heavy light of the dwarf star. They might even be able to physically reorient their leaves, a slow, deliberate turning to follow the dominant light source in the sky. Their growth cycles would not be daily, but seasonal in a way we can barely comprehend, tied to the long, looping periods of the planet's orbit around its two parent stars. A year could involve a double summer of intense heat, followed by a dim winter as the stars move apart in the sky. And the animals? Their sensory world would be a kaleidoscope. Imagine a creature with eyes that can perceive the different wavelengths of light from each sun as distinct primary colors, seeing a world of hues we cannot even imagine. Their navigation might depend on reading the complex interplay of shadows cast by two light sources. Their biological clocks would be a marvel of evolutionary engineering, tuned not to a simple 24-hour cycle, but to the intricate and often irregular patterns of the double dawn, the dual noon, and the staggered sunset. They would have to cope with fluctuating temperatures and radiation levels that would be fatal to most earthly life. Perhaps they would enter states of hibernation or estivation not based on seasons, but on the chaotic orbits of their suns, burrowing deep underground to wait out periods of intense stellar flares or extreme heat when the two suns align in the sky. Life in such a place would not just be surviving. It would be an active participant in a cosmic ballet, It's every biological process a response to the shifting, gravitational, and luminous pull of two stellar hearts. As you sink deeper into your own quiet darkness, you can let these worlds drift through your mind, a reminder of the infinite, strange, and beautiful possibilities hidden in the vast silence of the cosmos. Now, let us shift our focus from a sky of brilliant chaos to one of profound, unwavering stillness. Imagine a different kind of alien world, one that exists in a state of perfect, yet brutal, equilibrium. This is the realm of a tidally locked planet, a world that, like our own moon to our Earth, always presents the same face to its parent star. For this world, there is no rotation in the way we understand it. There is no sunrise, no sunset. There is only a permanent dayside, forever baked under the star's gaze, and a permanent night side, locked in an endless, frozen dark. Between these two impossible extremes lies the most precious territory in this entire system, the Terminator line, a band of eternal twilight. Here, in this sliver of perpetual dawn or dusk, life would face a set of challenges entirely different from those under a binary sun. The star would hang forever in one position on the horizon, a constant, unmoving source of light and warmth. Plants, or their equivalents, would not need to track a moving light source. Instead, they would evolve to be masters of low-angle illumination. We can picture vast, low-lying forests where every leaf and branch is oriented in a single direction, straining towards the distant, stationary star. They might grow horizontally rather than vertically, like immense, flat fans laid across the landscape. Their surfaces a deep, energy-absorbing black or purple to capture every possible photon. There would be no morning dew or evening cool down, only the steady, unchanging glow. The single greatest force shaping life in the Terminator zone would be the atmosphere itself, with one hemisphere superheated and the other cryogenically frozen. The temperature gradient would generate winds of unimaginable and constant ferocity. A permanent, planet-spanning storm would rage as hot air from the dayside rises and rushes towards the cold, dark night side at high altitudes, while colder, denser air from the night side flows back towards the light along the surface. Life here would have to be either anchored with incredible strength, perhaps with root systems that fuse with the very bedrock, or be built low to the ground, streamlined and resilient like the hardy lichens of Earth's most windswept mountains. Flying creatures might be an impossibility, or they might be masters of gliding, using the constant gales to circumnavigate the globe within this narrow band of life. Their world would be a symphony of endless wind, a sound that would permeate every moment of their existence, shaping their communication, their hunting, and their very evolution. And what are the creatures that inhabit this twilight realm? Without a day-night cycle, the fundamental rhythm of life on Earth is absent. Their biological clocks would not be circadian, but perhaps tied to these atmospheric tides or to the subtle, long-term cycles of their star's own activity. Senses would adapt accordingly. Vision would be permanently tuned to dim light conditions. But perhaps more important would be hearing, or even a sense of pressure to navigate and hunt in the howling, dusty twilight. An animal might evolve massive, sail-like ears to pinpoint the faintest sounds of prey scuttling between wind-scoured rocks. Others might communicate using low-frequency rumbles that can travel for miles, unimpeded by the roar of the wind. But let us venture away from the relative comfort of the twilight zone and into the great, endless night. Here on the far side of the planet, the star is a myth, a legend never seen. The sky is black, filled only with the cold, distant light of other stars. For a long time, we believed such a place would be utterly barren, a sterile wasteland of ice. But Earth has taught us that where there is energy, there can be life. The energy here would not come from the sky, but from the heart of the planet itself. If this world were geologically active, its night side could be dotted with geothermal vents or volcanoes, oases of heat and chemical energy in the otherwise absolute cold. Around these vents, entire ecosystems could flourish in total darkness. The base of the food chain would not be photosynthetic, but chemosynthetic. Microbes would thrive on sulfur compounds and other minerals erupting from the planet's core. And on these microbes, a complex web of life would be built. Imagine creatures with no eyes, or with eyes evolved solely to perceive the faint, ghostly glow of bioluminescence. This would be a world of touch, of taste, of vibration. Predators might be covered in exquisitely sensitive tendrils, feeling for the slightest movement in the water or air. Prey might defend themselves with chemical sprays or by mimicking the texture of the mineral-crusted terrain. Communication would be a silent language of light, with creatures flashing intricate patterns to attract mates, warn of danger, or lure in the unwary. Life in the endless night would be a slow, deliberate dance, played out in the isolated pockets of warmth, a testament to the sheer tenacity of biology to find a foothold, even in the most profound and permanent darkness imaginable, from this realm of profound blackness. Let us now travel across the star-strewn canvas of the galaxy to an entirely different kind of world, one that knows no true night at all. Imagine a planet not with one sun, but two. These are not a distant, faint pair, but two stellar companions locked in a gravitational embrace, with our hypothetical world orbiting both. Such systems, known as circumbinary planets, are not mere science fiction. They exist, and they present a fascinating and deeply challenging environment for life. The sky here would be a stage for a constant celestial waltz. Depending on the type of stars, you might see a large, brilliant yellow sun accompanied by a smaller, fiercer blue-white dwarf, or perhaps a steady orange star paired with a dim, moody red one. The rhythm of day and night, the most fundamental cycle for life on Earth, would be utterly transformed. There would be no simple sunrise or sunset. Instead, the planet might experience double dawns, with one star rising, followed by the other. The light would be a complex and shifting tapestry of color and intensity. When the two suns are close together in the sky, the world would be bathed in a brilliant, almost overwhelming light. When they're on opposite sides of the sky, there would be a softer but still pervasive illumination with two sets of shadows cast in different directions. True darkness might be a rare event, occurring only during a planetary eclipse or if the planet's axial tilt and orbit conspire to create brief periods where both suns are below the horizon simultaneously. How would life adapt to this cacophony of light? Let's first consider the plants, the foundation of any light-based ecosystem. Photosynthesis on Earth is tuned to the specific spectrum of our single yellow-white sun. On a world with two suns of different colors, a plant would need to be far more versatile. Perhaps to capture every possible photon from both the yellow and the red star, foliage would evolve to be a deep, matte black, absorbing energy across the entire visible spectrum. The landscape might be a forest of darkness, a stark and dramatic contrast to the brilliant sky. Alternatively, you might see a form of specialized biology where different species of flora are tuned to each star. Valleys might be filled with red-leaf plants that thrive on the light of one sun, while the hillsides are covered in blue-green growths that prefer the other, creating a world whose colors shift and change as the suns trace their intricate paths across the sky. And what of the animals that would live under this unblinking gaze? The constant, intense radiation would be a formidable challenge. Many creatures might be subterranean or aquatic, seeking refuge from the relentless light in caves or deep water. Those that live on the surface would require powerful adaptations. Imagine animals with mirrored or iridescent carapaces to reflect excess heat and radiation, or with thick, leathery hides. Eyes would be a marvel of evolutionary engineering, perhaps equipped with multiple layered eyelids or pupils that could contract to a minuscule pinprick to avoid being blinded. Perhaps vision would evolve to see in polarized light to cut through the atmospheric glare created by two light sources. The behavior of these creatures would be dictated by the complex cycles of their suns. Instead of a circadian rhythm based on a 24-hour cycle of light and dark, their biological clocks might be tied to the much longer orbital period of the two stars around each other. There might be a season of the twin suns, a period of intense activity and growth when the stars are aligned and the energy input is at its maximum. This could be followed by a season of the distant suns, a cooler, calmer period of hibernation or migration when the stars are at their farthest separation. The concepts of nocturnal and diurnal would lose their meaning, replaced by a more complex spectrum of behaviors adapted not to the presence or absence of light, but to its quality, its color, and its intensity. Life here would not be a dance between light and shadow, but a symphony played to the rhythm of two hearts of fire. But let us now journey from this celestial forge of twin suns to an entirely different, and perhaps even more alien, realm. Imagine a world at the opposite extreme, a planet shrouded in perpetual, unending night. Such worlds are not just a flight of fancy. They may be common throughout the cosmos. They could be rogue planets, cast out from their parent stars during the chaotic formation of their solar systems. now wandering the cold, empty void of interstellar space. Or they could be worlds tidally locked to a dim star, with one hemisphere perpetually facing away, a land where the sun never rises. In either case, the fundamental question for life is the same. Without the nourishing light of star, where does the energy come from? The answer would lie not in the sky, but deep within the planet itself. Life in this eternal darkness would be powered by the planet's own internal heat, a process we have seen glimpses of in the deepest trenches of our own oceans. Hydrothermal vents, great plumes of superheated, mineral-rich water billowing from the planet's core, will become the oases of this dark world. Here, the foundation of the food chain would not be photosynthesis, but chemosynthesis. Entire ecosystems would be built upon microbes that consume chemicals like hydrogen sulfide, methane, and ammonia, converting them into energy in a process that is utterly alien to our sun-drenched surface world. These chemosynthetic bacteria would form thick, slimy mats around the vents, becoming the producers, the equivalent of our forests and grasslands, for a bizarre food web of creatures adapted to crushing pressure, scalding temperatures, and absolute blackness. In a world without light, the very concept of vision would be obsolete. The senses we consider secondary would evolve to become dominant, reaching levels of acuity we can barely comprehend. Echolocation, the ability to see with sound, might become the primary sense for navigation and hunting. The silent air or the deep, cold oceans would be filled with a constant chorus of clicks, chirps, and songs, an invisible symphony of sound waves bouncing off the landscape and prey, painting a detailed three-dimensional map in the minds of these creatures. Others might develop a profound sensitivity to vibration, feeling the subtle footsteps of prey through kilometers of solid rock. Still others could evolve electroreception, sensing the faint bioelectric fields that all living things generate, allowing them to detect a hidden creature's very heartbeat in the dark. Smell and taste would be exquisitely refined, allowing predators to follow the faintest chemical trails left by their quarry for days on end. And yet, this world of endless night might not be entirely dark. Life often finds a way to create its own light. Bioluminescence, the chemical production of light by a living organism, could become a dominant feature of this ecosystem. Vast, subterranean caverns could be illuminated by glowing fungi, casting an ethereal blue-green light on the strange creatures that crawl and scuttle below. The deep oceans of a rogue planet could be a spectacle of silent, moving constellations as swarms of bioluminescent organisms communicate with intricate flashes of light. Predators use glowing lures to attract unsuspecting prey, and potential mates engage in dazzling courtship displays. It would be a world where life itself provides the illumination, a decentralized, living galaxy painted against a backdrop of perfect black. The patterns and colors of these living lights would be a language unto themselves, a complex visual dialogue unfolding in a place where no star has ever shone. Let us return for a moment to that tidally locked world, for it presents a unique and fascinating middle ground. Between the scorched, sun-blasted dayside and the frozen, endless nightside lies a sliver of permanent twilight, the Terminator Zone. Here, the sun is forever fixed on the horizon, neither rising nor setting. This ribbon of land, encircling the entire planet, would be a world of eternal sunset or sunrise. The temperature would be stable, and a weak, reddish light would provide a constant, if meager, source of energy. The greatest challenge here would be the wind. The extreme temperature difference between the two hemispheres would generate colossal, perpetual gales, a constant, planet-scouring wind flowing from the hot side to the cold. Life here would have to be tenacious and low-slung. Plants might grow not upwards, but sideways, hugging the ground and pointing their leaves permanently towards the distant, unmoving sun. Their leaves would likely be black or deep purple, evolved to absorb every possible photon of the dim, red-shifted light. The animals, in turn, would be streamlined and powerfully built, adapted to move and hunt in the face of a relentless, unidirectional hurricane, their world a landscape of long, distorted shadows that never, ever move. And yet, these are worlds defined by a lack of light. Let us journey now from the eternal shadow to its conceptual opposite, a place of overwhelming, relentless illumination. Imagine a world in a binary star system, a planet blessed, or perhaps cursed, with two suns. The sky here would be a spectacle of constant change. Sunrise would not be a singular event, but a duet, depending on a planet's orbit. It might circle one star while the other hangs more distantly in its sky. A brilliant, wandering star that imposes its own seasons and its own light upon the world. The rhythms of life here would be unimaginably complex. There would be the day governed by the primary sun, but this would be overlaid with the cycle of the second sun. There would be times when both suns are in the sky, creating a period of intense, perhaps scorching daylight. Then, a time when only one is visible. And then, a brief, true night when the planet's rotation hides it from both, before the second sun rises to create its own separate day. The flora of such a world would be a marvel of biochemical engineering. Photosynthesis, the engine of life, would have to adapt to two different light sources, which may have different colors and intensities. Perhaps plants would evolve a dual pigment system, with leaves that are a strange, shimmering black or a deep, iridescent purple, designed to absorb energy from two different parts of the spectrum. Or maybe they would develop a way to physically protect themselves with waxy, reflective coatings on their leaves that could be thickened or thinned, or leaves that could fold in on themselves like a closing fist during the harsh glare of the double noon. The very rhythm of life, the pulse of wakefulness and sleep that governs every creature on Earth, would be a symphony of overlapping cycles. Animals might have a primary sleep cycle tied to the main sun, but enter a state of torpor or semi-hibernation during the great day when both suns blaze overhead. Their eyes might evolve complex, layered pupils, or even secondary, polarized eyelids to cope with the shifting intensity and angles of the light. Navigation would be a profound challenge and an opportunity. with two suns to cast two separate shadows. Creatures might learn to hunt and hide in a world of duplicate silhouettes, a landscape of optical illusions where depth perception is a constant, shifting puzzle. Now, consider a different arrangement, a circumbinary planet, one that orbits both stars as they circle each other in a tight, gravitational embrace. From the surface of this world, the two suns would appear as a close-knit pair, perhaps a brilliant yellow-white star and its smaller orange companion. They would rise together and set together, but their relationship would create a unique celestial rhythm. The day would be punctuated by periodic, fleeting twilights as one star passes before its companion, causing a sudden, predictable dip in light and warmth. Life would evolve in lockstep with this regular eclipse. Perhaps vast fields of solar-collecting flora would momentarily furl their leaves during the dimming, conserving energy, only to open again in unison as the full light returns. The behavior of animals would be choreographed by this celestial clockwork, a time for a brief rest, a moment to hunt less attentive prey, or a trigger for a synchronized mating ritual. On such a world, every object would cast not one, but two shadows. A forest would be a bewildering maze of overlapping darkness, the ground a shifting mosaic of umbra and penumbra. A predator could use this to its advantage, its form broken and disguised by the dual shadows, while prey would need twice the vigilance, its eyes adapted to perceive threats in a world of doubled silhouettes. The color of the light itself would constantly change. As the two stars orbit each other, their combined light would shift subtly. When the orange star is in front, the world would be bathed in a warmer amber glow. When the yellow-white star is dominant, the light would be sharper, crisper. The entire landscape would be painted in a slowly oscillating palette of colors, a silent, planetary scale light show. The fundamental rules of day and night, of season and cycle, which we take as universal constants, are revealed to be merely local bylaws, endlessly rewritten in the grander cosmos. Each new configuration of stars and planets offers a new canvas upon which evolution can paint its next, unimaginable masterpiece. But this canvas can be stretched in other ways, the celestial architecture rearranged. Imagine now a world that orbits only one of its two suns. Here, the primary star would dominate the sky, a familiar, life-giving orb, charting a course from sunrise to sunset. But it would not be alone. Far across the void, its companion star would hang like a permanent, blazing jewel, an eternal lantern in the cosmic dark. Depending on its distance and luminosity, this second sun might be a brilliant pinpoint, brighter than any star or planet in our own night sky. Or it could be a smaller, yet still significant disk of light. On this world, the very concept of night might be a foreign one. As the primary sun dips below the horizon, the sky would not fade to black. Instead, the second sun, the distant companion, would rule the heavens, bathing the landscape in a soft, ethereal twilight. True darkness might never fall. Life's rhythms would not be a simple binary of on and off, of wakefulness and sleep. Instead, They might follow a pattern of major and minor activity. The great day, under the full glare of the nearby sun, would be a time of intense energy, of photosynthesis at its peak, of bustling activity. The lesser day, the long, gentle twilight under the distant sun, would be a time for different forms of life to stir. Perhaps nocturnal predators as we know them would not exist. Instead, there would be crepuscular hunters, adapted perfectly for this world of endless dusk. Plant life would face a unique challenge and opportunity. It would never need to fully shut down. The process of photosynthesis could continue, albeit at a reduced rate, throughout the night, fueled by the faint light of the distant star. We might see flora with two types of photosynthetic pigments, one optimized for the high-energy, broad-spectrum light of the primary sun, and another, far more sensitive, designed to capture the specific, weaker wavelengths of the companion. Forests might be composed of plants that track both suns, their leaves slowly twisting on a 24-hour cycle to follow the bright arc of the main star, before subtly reorienting to drink in the gentle photons of the twilight star. The color of the world would be in constant, gentle flux, shifting from the bright, warm hues of the great day to the cool, silvered blues and purples of the lesser day. But the true complexity of this world would unfold over much grander timescales. The two stars themselves are in orbit, a slow, majestic dance that might take centuries or millennia to complete. This dance would impose a great year upon the planet, a cycle of mega seasons far beyond our own. 4 generations. The two suns might appear on opposite sides of the planet's orbit, creating the world of perpetual twilight we've described. But as the stars continued their cosmic waltz, they would eventually appear closer and closer together in the planet's sky. This would usher in an age of true darkness. For the first time in centuries, as the primary sun sets, the companion star would set with it, and the planet would experience a proper night. This onset of darkness would be a profound, world-altering event. Life that had adapted to constant light would face an existential crisis. Creatures with eyes built for twilight would suddenly find the world plunged into an absolute blackness they were not equipped for. Plants that relied on the faint secondary sun would enter a long period of dormancy or death. It would be a time of great dying, but also of great opportunity. For in the deep caves, in the ocean trenches, or burrowed beneath the soil, other forms of life might have been waiting. Bioluminescent fungi could bloom across the forest floor, creating new, living constellations in the sudden dark. Deep-sea creatures, no longer confined by the sunlit surface, could rise to explore new realms. The entire planet's evolutionary history would be written in these epic chapters of light and dark, with entire ecosystems rising and falling not with the seasons of a year, but with the seasons of the stars themselves. The very stability we take for granted is revealed to be just one of infinite possibilities from this grand, cyclical drama. Let us turn our gaze to a world defined not by change, but by a profound and eternal stillness. Imagine a planet tethered to its star by the unyielding chains of gravity, a world that is tidally locked. Just as our moon always shows the same face to Earth, this planet would present one hemisphere in a perpetual, unending day, while the other is locked in a night that has lasted for billions of years. This is not the gentle twilight of our binary world, but a stark, permanent division of reality. Life here would not adapt to cycles of light and dark, but to a geography of searing heat and absolute cold. The day side of such a world would be a formidable environment. At the substellar point, the place directly beneath the star, the sun would hang motionless at the zenith, a permanent, unblinking eye in the sky. Here, temperatures could soar high enough to sterilize the surface, boiling away any liquid water and baking the very rock. But the fate of this world and any potential for life would hinge on its atmosphere. If the planet has a thick, dynamic atmosphere, it could act as a global heat engine. Powerful, planet-spanning winds would be born in the intense heat of the day side, howling ceaselessly towards the cold of the night side, carrying precious thermal energy with them. Without this atmospheric circulation, the night side would become so cold that the very air would freeze and fall as nitrogen snow, leaving the day side a vacuum-blasted desert. But with a robust atmosphere, a habitable zone could exist. Not a region in space, but a region on the planet itself, the Terminator line. This is the ring of perpetual twilight that separates the day hemisphere from the night hemisphere. Here, the sun would be forever fixed on the horizon, casting long, dramatic shadows that never move. The light would be a constant, ruddy dawn or a deep, lingering dusk, depending on the star's color. This ribbon of twilight, stretching around the entire circumference of the planet, would be the cradle of life. Plants, or their alien equivalents, would not need to track a moving sun. They could grow in vast, static forests, their leaves or light-gathering organs permanently angled towards the horizon, optimized to capture every photon from their low-hanging star. If the star were a red dwarf, the most common type in the galaxy, these photosynthesizers might appear black to our eyes, evolving to absorb the maximum energy from the dim, infrared heavy light. The creatures that evolved in this twilight ring would have a fundamentally different experience of time. Their biology would be untethered from circadian rhythms. Their cycles of sleep and wakefulness, of hunting and rest, might instead be governed by the colossal weather patterns sweeping in from the day side. A life form might be active during periods of relative calm and take shelter when the planet-girdling winds reach a furious peak. Senses would adapt accordingly. With a stationary light source, vision might be highly specialized, perhaps with eyes that can see far into the infrared to spot the heat of prey against the cooler shadows. But in the deeper, darker parts of the twilight zone, or for creatures that hunt where shadows pull, other senses might dominate. Echolocation could become a primary tool for mapping the world, or perhaps a sensitivity to the subtle vibrations in the ground or the shifts in atmospheric pressure that herald the approach of the eternal storms. And what are the two great wildernesses that border this sliver of life? The night side is a realm of unimaginable cold and darkness. Yet, it may not be entirely dead. If the planet has internal heat, from radioactive decay in its core or tidal flexing from its star, this energy could power ecosystems far from the sun's light. Volcanic vents on the floor of a frozen-over ocean could create pockets of warmth and chemical nutrients, giving rise to life that has no concept of a sky, let alone a sun. These beings would live in a three-dimensional world of pressure, temperature gradients, and chemical trails. Their entire cosmology, their very understanding of existence, would be built from the planet's inner fire, not the distant fusion of a star. To them, the surface would be a mythical, impossibly cold ceiling to their universe. They would be the true children of the endless night, their evolution shaped by a darkness as old as the world itself. On the opposite side of this world, the day side, lies a landscape of a different kind of desolation. Here, the sun is a permanent, unblinking eye in the sky, baking the surface under a relentless torrent of energy and radiation. Any water would have boiled away eons ago, leaving behind a cracked, sterile desert of shimmering rock. Life, if it could exist here at all, would be an exercise in extreme endurance. Perhaps it would be found deep beneath the surface, in caves or aquifers, shielded from the sterilizing glare. Or maybe in a truly alien biochemistry. Life could be based on silicon, its crystalline forms thriving in the furnace-like temperatures. We can imagine strange, mineral-based organisms that slowly grow across the hot rocks, their metabolism a sluggish, geological process, their entire existence a testament to life's tenacity in the face of an eternal, unforgiving noon. This world of extremes, of a hemisphere of absolute darkness and a hemisphere of absolute light, shows us how a single, unmoving star can sculpt a planet into two profoundly different realms. But what happens when the heavens are not so simple? What if a world is born not into the steady gaze of one sun, but the complex dance of two? Binary star systems are remarkably common in our galaxy, perhaps even more so than single stars like our own. The planets within these systems would experience a sky that is fundamentally alien to us, a sky of shifting light, dual shadows, and rhythms of day and night that defy our simple terrestrial experience. The nature of life on such a world would depend entirely on its orbit. Imagine a planet that orbits just one of the two stars, with the second star being a more distant, wandering companion. This is the S-type, or circumstellar orbit. Here, the planet would have a primary day dictated by the rising and setting of its parent star. But the second sun would paint a complex and ever-changing masterpiece of light upon this basic canvas. Depending on its own orbit, this second sun might appear in the sky alongside the first, creating a period of intensely bright high day, where the heat is magnified and shadows are cast in duplicate, one sharp and one soft, from two different points in the sky. Or it might rise just as the primary sun sets, banishing true night and replacing it with an extended, eerie twilight. There would be no deep, starry darkness for half the planet's year. Only a transition from the bright, warm light of one sun to the dimmer, perhaps differently colored light of the other. The implications for biology are staggering. Photosynthesis, the very foundation of so much of Earth's life, would have to evolve under entirely new rules. If the two suns were of different types, say a bright yellow G-type star like our own, and a smaller, cooler red dwarf, plants would need to be opportunists. They might develop pigments capable of absorbing energy from two very different parts of the spectrum. Perhaps their leaves would be a deep, dark purple or even black to maximize their absorption of every available photon, regardless of its color. Or maybe different species of plants would specialize, some thriving under the golden rays of the primary, others dominating the landscape during the long, ruddy twilight of the red companion. Animal life would be equally transformed. Circadian rhythms, the internal clocks that govern the sleep and wake cycles of terrestrial creatures, would be tuned to this complex celestial waltz. An animal might have its period of rest not during darkness, but during the dimmer red light period, and become active only during the full dual sunlight blaze. Vision would have to adapt to a world of double shadows and shifting light intensities. Predators and prey would play out their evolutionary arms race in an environment where a hunter could be betrayed by a second, unexpected shadow, or where the color of the light itself could provide a unique form of camouflage. Then there's the other possibility, a P-type or circumlunar orbit, where a planet circles both stars as if they were a single gravitational point. Here, the two suns would be a constant presence in the sky, a close-set pair of brilliant jewels. The day-night cycle would be more familiar as the planet rotates on its axis, turning one face towards the binary pair and one face away. But the nature of that day would be unlike anything we know. As the two stars orbited each other, they would periodically eclipse one another from the planet's perspective. Imagine standing on a field as the two suns climb the sky, their combined light casting a brilliant, even glow. Then, slowly, one star begins to slide in front of the other. The light would not simply dim, it would change in quality. The temperature would drop noticeably, perhaps for an hour, perhaps for several hours. This would not be a rare, once-in-a-lifetime event like a solar eclipse on Earth. It will be a regular, rhythmic pulse in the planet's daily or weekly life. These regular eclipse winters would be a powerful evolutionary driver. Life would have to adapt to these predictable, rapid-fire changes in energy. Plants might have to store energy in specialized organs to continue their metabolism during the sudden chill of an eclipse. Animals might time their entire life cycles around these events. Perhaps for some, the dimming of the suns is a signal to hunt, a brief period of twilight in the middle of the day that gives them an advantage over their prey. For others, it might be a time of mandatory rest, a moment to conserve energy in burrows or nests until the full light returns. The seasons themselves would be a product of this intricate dance, driven not just by axial tilt, but by the planet's long, looping orbit around the two stars, bringing it closer and farther from its twin sources of heat. Life on a circumbinary world would be forged in rhythm with the sky, its heart beating in time with the pulse of two suns, its entire existence a response to a light that is never, ever simple. But this is only one way to live under two suns. There is another, perhaps even more dramatic arrangement, where a planet does not circle the distant center of two stars, but instead orbits closely to just one of them. In this S-type orbit, the world would have a primary sun, a star that governs its year and its basic day-night cycle. But it would not be alone. In the sky would hang a second sun, a distant, wandering cousin to its own, sometimes a brilliant pinpoint, sometimes a small, searing disk. This second star would not rise and set with the day. Its journey across the heavens would be a slow, majestic crawl, dictated by the grand orbit of the two stars around each other, a cycle that could last decades or even centuries. The seasons on such a world would be unlike anything we could conceive of. They would be epic in scale, lasting for years on end. There would be the long winter, when the planet's orbit takes it to the far side of its primary star, with the second sun a remote and feeble presence, perhaps visible only in the daytime sky. But then, as the planet and its sun swing around in their cosmic waltz, they would approach the other star, ushering in the great summer. During this period, the second sun would grow in the sky, a constant, broiling presence. For weeks or months, there might be no true night. As the primary sun set, the second sun might still be high in the sky, bathing the landscape in an eerie, perpetual twilight that slowly brightens into a two-sun dawn. The heat would be relentless, the light unceasing. Life here would be a story of endurance. Photosynthesis would be a complex affair, especially if the two stars were of different types. A large yellow star and a smaller, cooler red dwarf, for instance. The light bathing the planet would shift in color and intensity over these long seasons. A plant optimized for the yellow light of its main star would find the reddish glow of the second sun less nourishing. The ultimate adaptation might be foliage that is not green, but black, containing a cocktail of pigments designed to absorb energy across the entire visible spectrum, wasting no photon, whether it comes from the close, warm sun or the distant, cool one. During the great summer, these plants might enter a state of dormancy to survive the scorching heat and radiation, their black leaves reflecting as much energy as possible, waiting for the long, lean winter to return. Animals, in turn, would be caught in this planet-wide rhythm of feast and famine. The great summer might trigger an explosion of life, but it would also be a time of immense stress. Perhaps entire ecosystems would engage in mass migrations, not from north to south, but from one hemisphere to the other, a desperate, generations-long trek to stay in the temperate zone, forever fleeing the approach of the second sun. Or perhaps life would simply wait. Imagine creatures that hibernate for a decade, sealed in deep subterranean burrows, their metabolism slowed to a near standstill, dreaming away the years of fire until the planet's orbit carries them back to the cool relief of a single sun sky. Their senses would have to be equally extreme. Eyes might possess pupils that could shrink to a near-invisible pinprick, or be shielded by multiple nictitating membranes to endure the glare of two suns, yet still be sensitive enough to see by the light of a single distant star. Life would be a pendulum, swinging slowly between two profound extremes, its evolution shaped not by the daily turn of the world, but by the slow, inexorable dance of its stellar parents. From these worlds of complex, shifting light, we now turn to a place of stark and absolute permanence, a world where the sky never changes. We journey to a planet locked in a gravitational embrace with its star, a world of eternal day and endless night. Tidally locked planets are common, especially around the small, dim red dwarf stars that are the most numerous in our galaxy. Just as our moon always shows the same face to Earth, these planets have one hemisphere perpetually baked by their sun, and one hemisphere frozen in a darkness that has never known a dawn. Between these two extremes lies a sliver of a region, a twilight zone, a permanent terminator where the sun hangs forever on the horizon, casting long, unmoving shadows. It is here, in this ribbon of eternal sunset, that life might find its most stable and perhaps its most bizarre foothold. The day side of such a world would be a scorching, sterile desert. With the sun forever overhead, temperatures could soar high enough to melt lead, boiling away any surface water and stripping the atmosphere of its life-giving gases. Any life that dared exist here would need to be incredibly resilient, perhaps living deep underground, or composed of silicon-based chemistries that can withstand the hellish temperatures. The night side, by contrast, would be an empire of ice, a landscape of absolute blackness, where the temperature plummets to hundreds of degrees below zero. Here, the atmosphere itself might freeze, snowing out onto the surface as nitrogen or carbon dioxide ice, leaving a near-perfect vacuum. It is a place of profound stillness, a continent-sized tomb where the stars are the only source of light, and they never, ever move. But between these two impossibly hostile realms, in that narrow band of perpetual twilight, the conditions for life could be, paradoxically, perfect. This Terminator zone would be a world of eternal dawn or eternal dusk, depending on your perspective. The star, forever a crimson ember hanging on the horizon, would bathe the landscape in a soft, reddish light. Temperatures here could remain stable for millennia, warm enough for liquid water to flow, but not so hot as to boil it away. The very concept of time would be different. There would be no morning, no evening, no seasons governed by axial tilt. There would only be the now, a constant, unchanging, and gentle present. Life here would be shaped by this permanence. Imagine a forest. The trees would not grow straight up, reaching for a sun that moves across the sky. Instead, they might grow at a permanent angle, their canopies tilted towards the stationary star, like a field of sunflowers frozen in their morning prayer. Their leaves, or their equivalent, might not be green. Chlorophyll is optimized for our sun's yellow-white light under a dim red dwarf. a more efficient pigment would be needed, something that could absorb as much energy as possible from the faint, red-shifted light. The foliage of this world could be a deep, rich black or a shimmering, dark purple, turning the twilight landscape into a scene of alien and profound beauty. Competition would not be about who can grow fastest over a season, but who can secure a patch of uninterrupted light for an eternity. A fallen tree would not just be a temporary gap in the canopy. It would be a permanent change to the landscape, a new opportunity for light that could last for thousands of years. The greatest challenge for life in this Terminator zone, however, would not be the light, but the wind. The colossal temperature difference between the baked day side and the frozen night side would create an atmospheric engine of immense power. Air, superheated on the day side, would rise and flow towards the cold, dark hemisphere, while frigid, dense air from a night side would sink and rush across the surface towards the light. This would result in perpetual gale-force winds roaring across the twilight zone. Any life here would have to be built to withstand this constant assault. Plants might be low-lying and incredibly flexible, their roots forming vast, interlocking networks to anchor themselves in the soil. Animals might be streamlined, built low to the ground, perhaps with shells or exoskeletons to deflect the wind's force. Creatures of the Terminator would have senses tuned to a world without cycles. With the light source never changing, vision might be less important than hearing or a sense of touch and vibration. In the constant howl of the wind, subtle changes in air pressure could signal an approaching predator or the location of shelter. There would be no circadian rhythm, no biological clock tied to a rising and setting sun. The rhythm of life would be governed by other forces: hunger, thirst, the need to avoid the constant directional threat of the wind. Predators might hunt upwind, using the gales to mask their sound and carry their scent away from their prey. Herbivores might graze in the permanent lee of mountains or rock formations, geological features that would become the most valuable real estate on the planet, defining oases of relative calm in a world of unending storm. The very flow of evolution would be carved by the wind and the unmoving light, a testament to life's ability to find purchase in the most alien of cradles. But this vibrant, windswept ribbon of life would exist between two immense and seemingly barren kingdoms: the kingdom of endless day and the kingdom of eternal night. On the day side, beneath the unblinking glare of the local star, the surface would be a sterilized, scorched desert. Temperatures would climb to points where water would instantly vaporize, and the constant bombardment of stellar radiation would shred any complex organic molecules foolish enough to form on the surface. Here, life would be forced into hiding. It might exist deep underground, drawing energy not from the hostile star above, but from the planet's own geothermal heat. Or perhaps it could take root in the shadows of vast mountain ranges, colossal peaks tall enough to cast permanent shadows even in a world of high sun, creating cooler microclimates where moisture could persist. Photosynthesis, if it existed at all on this face of the world, would be an extreme sport. Plants might develop metallic, reflective sheens on their leaves to bounce away the worst of the energy, or possess biological cooling systems of unparalleled efficiency. On the opposite side of the world, in the hemisphere of perpetual night, an entirely different set of rules would apply. Here, the temperature would plummet to unimaginable lows, potentially cold enough to freeze the atmosphere itself, causing nitrogen and oxygen to fall as snow upon a landscape of utter blackness. The surface would be a silent, dead wasteland, but beneath a crust of ice, potentially miles thick, a different story could unfold. If the planet had enough internal heat from its formation or from the radioactive decay of heavy elements in its core, it could sustain a global ocean of liquid water, insulated from the killing cold above. In this deep, dark ocean, life would have no knowledge of its parent star. It would be a world without light, powered entirely by chemistry. Hydrothermal vents, spewing superheated, mineral-rich water from the planet's core, would be the oases. Here, chemosynthetic bacteria would form the base of a food chain, metabolizing sulfur and other chemicals to create energy. Strange ecosystems would blossom in the crushing pressure and absolute darkness, populated by creatures that might never develop eyes, but would instead navigate through exquisitely sensitive tendrils, pressure sensors, and an advanced sense of taste and smell, tasting the chemical trails of their prey in the water. In this hidden ocean, bioluminescence might evolve not as a reaction to a daily cycle, but as a permanent feature of the ecosystem. It could be used for luring prey, for startling predators, or for complex mating rituals, creating ghostly constellations of moving light in the abyssal depths. This would be a world within a world, completely decoupled from the events on the surface, its entire evolutionary history written by geology and chemistry in the absence of sun. The only connection between the two realms might be the slow, grinding movement of glaciers at the edge of the Terminator, where ice from the night side meets the melting heat of the day side. These transitional zones could be home to yet another form of life, organisms that thrive on the minerals scraped up by the ice and deposited in the meltwater, a thin, fragile ecosystem bridging the gap between fire and frost. The sheer variety of life on such a tidally locked world is staggering to contemplate, all stemming from the simple fact of a stationary sun. But the universe is not limited to such simple arrangements. For many planets, the sky would not hold one sun, but two. These are the circumbinary worlds, planets that orbit a pair of stars locked in a gravitational embrace. Here, the concepts of day, night, and seasons become profoundly more complex, and the challenges and opportunities for life are multiplied. Imagine standing on the surface of such a world. Instead of a single, predictable arc, your suns would trace intricate, overlapping paths across the sky. Sometimes they would be close together, a brilliant, dazzling pair, and at other times they would be on opposite horizons, creating a world with no true night at all. The nature of the light would be in constant flux. A planet orbiting two different types of stars, say, a large yellow star like our sun and a smaller, cooler red dwarf, would experience shifts not only in the brightness of its day, but also in the color of the light. For part of its orbit, the world would be bathed in the familiar yellow-white light. But as the stars moved in their own orbits, the reddish hue of the smaller star might begin to dominate, changing the entire spectrum of energy available for photosynthesis. Plants on such a world would need to be incredibly adaptable. They might evolve pigments capable of absorbing energy efficiently from a much wider range of the light spectrum than plants on Earth. Perhaps they would have 2 or more types of photosynthetic pigments, one optimized for the yellow star and another for the red, allowing them to switch their primary energy source as the celestial ballet unfolded above. Or maybe they would simply be a dark, almost black color, a pragmatic adaptation to absorb as much energy as possible, regardless of the hue of the incoming light. The animal life that evolved under these shifting skies would be just as remarkable. The very concept of a circadian rhythm, the internal clock that governs the cycles of sleep and wakefulness in terrestrial life, will be fundamentally rewritten. On a world where true darkness is a rare and fleeting event, perhaps occurring only when the planet's orbit takes it into the shadow of both stars simultaneously, the rhythm of life would not be tied to a simple 24-hour cycle. Animals might evolve to be perpetually active, their bodies adapted for constant foraging and awareness. Or perhaps they would enter short, periodic states of rest, napping in the shade during the intense heat of a double noon, when both suns are high in the sky. Their sleep would not be a long journey into unconsciousness, but a series of brief pauses in a world that never truly goes quiet. Their senses, too, would be finely tuned to this complex environment. Eyes might evolve with incredibly dynamic pupils, capable of constricting to mere pinpricks to protect against the overwhelming glare of 2 suns. Some species might possess layered or polarized lenses, biological filters that could be deployed to reduce the intensity or even shift the perceived color of the light, allowing them to see clearly weather-bathed in the harsh light of a stellar conjunction or the softer, single glow of a distant sun. The world would be seen not in one set of colors, but in many, a constantly changing palette that would dictate everything from camouflage to mating displays. But the most profound influence of the twin suns would be on the planet's climate and seasons. These would not be the gentle, predictable cycles of an Earth-like world, governed by a simple axial tilt. Instead, the seasons would be a product of a complex cosmic dance. There would be the Great Summer, a period of intense, prolonged heat when the planet's orbit brings it closer to the binary pair's center of mass. And there would be the long winter as it swings out towards the epistrand of its path. Superimposed on this grand cycle would be shorter, more erratic seasons created by the 2 stars orbiting each other. When the stars are aligned from the planet's perspective, they might create searing heat waves, followed by sudden cool spells as one star eclipses the other, briefly throttling the energy reaching the planet's surface. Life would have to adapt or perish in the face of such volatility. We can imagine vast migrations, not from north to south, but in spiraling, intricate patterns across the globe, as entire ecosystems follow the ever-shifting bands of tolerable temperature. Herds of alien grazers might spend their lives on the move, their journey dictated not by the position of a single sun, but by the complex interplay of two. Predators would follow, and the entire food web would be a nomadic tapestry, woven across the face of a world in constant climatic flux. Other creatures might opt for a different strategy: deep, prolonged hibernation or estivation, their metabolisms slowing to a near standstill to wait out the most extreme periods of heat or cold in subterranean burrows or deep ocean trenches. Even the planet itself would feel the pull of its two masters. The gravitational forces would create complex tidal effects, not just in any oceans, but in the atmosphere and even the solid crust. This constant push and pull could drive extreme volcanism and tectonic activity, shaping the very landscape. The weather systems would be unlike anything we know. Instead of a single global circulation pattern, there might be two, each centered on the point directly beneath the sun. These systems would swirl across the planet, merging and clashing in storms of unimaginable scale and power, their paths as complex and beautiful as the orbits of the stars that spawn them. The sheer, chaotic vitality of a circumbinary world is a testament to the tenacity of life. It demonstrates how biology can find a way to thrive even amidst the most complex and seemingly hostile conditions, so long as there is a source of energy. But what happens when that energy source is removed? What about worlds that have no sun at all, cast out from their stellar nurseries? These are the rogue planets, wandering the cold, dark abyss of interstellar space. Here, in the endless night, the rules of life must be completely rewritten. The story of biology is not confined to the warm glow of a star. It can also be found in the profound and utter darkness between them. Imagine a world untethered, a cosmic nomad adrift in the silent gulf between the stars. These rogue planets, ejected from their nascent solar systems by gravitational quarrels, face an existence of perpetual twilight, then eternal night. On the surface, they are monuments to the absolute cold of deep space. Temperatures plummet to hundreds of degrees below zero, and any atmosphere they once held lies frozen as a brittle veneer upon a landscape of utter stillness. Without the energy of a sun, the familiar engine of photosynthesis cannot turn. There are no leaves to catch the light, no green pigments to convert photons into sugar. From this perspective, such a world seems like the very definition of sterility, a cosmic tombstone wandering the void. But the absence of a star does not necessarily mean the absence of heat. The heart of a planet can be a furnace of its own. Deep within its core, the decay of radioactive elements, a process that has warmed the Earth for billions of years, can generate a steady, reliable flow of heat. This internal warmth, combined with the residual heat left over from the planet's violent formation, radiates outwards on the frigid surface. This energy is lost to space. But if the world is large enough and possesses a significant amount of water, a remarkable thing can happen. A thick shell of ice, perhaps many kilometers deep, can form on the surface, acting as a perfect insulator. Beneath this icy carapace, the planet's internal heat is trapped, sufficient to maintain a vast, global ocean of liquid water. Here, in a realm of absolute darkness and crushing pressure, shielded from the cold of the cosmos, the stage for a completely different kind of biology is set. In this sunless ocean, life would not look to the sky for sustenance, but to the planet's own geological heartbeat. The same forces that warm the ocean would create fissures and vents in the seabed, spewing out a rich cocktail of superheated, mineral-laden water from the planet's mantle. On Earth, we see these hydrothermal vents in the deepest parts of our own oceans, and they are teeming with life, forming oases of activity in the cold, dark abyss. The foundation of these ecosystems is not photosynthesis, but chemosynthesis. Microbes, the architects of this dark food web, would harness the chemical energy locked within compounds like hydrogen sulfide, which smells of rotten eggs to us, to create organic matter. They would be the producers, the equivalent of plants and algae, building the first link in a chain of life that has never known a single photon of starlight. From these microbial mats, an entire ecosystem could arise, a complex tapestry of evolution woven in utter blackness. Grazing creatures, perhaps slug-like or crustacean-like in form, might slowly move across the seabed, scraping the chemosynthetic bacteria from the rock. In turn, predators would evolve to hunt these grazers. But how would they find their prey in a world without light? Vision would be a useless extravagance. Instead, the senses would be tuned to other frequencies. Perhaps these creatures would navigate by a form of echolocation, emitting clicks and calls that bounce off their surroundings. Others might develop an exquisite sense of taste or smell, following the chemical trails of their prey through the water. Still others could evolve to detect the faint bioelectric fields generated by the muscle contractions of other living things, turning the very act of movement into a beacon for a hunter. Bioluminescence might also arise, not as a byproduct of sunlight, but as a primary tool for communication, for luring prey, or for startling predators. Imagine vast gardens of sessile organisms, glowing with a cold, ethereal light to attract mates, or a deep-sea hunter with a shimmering lure. A single point of hypnotic beauty in the oppressive dark, masking a mouth filled with needle-sharp teeth. The pace of life here would be slow, dictated by the finite energy bubbling up from the planet's core. Metabolisms would be incredibly efficient, and lifespans could be extraordinarily long, measured not in years defined by orbits, but in centuries or millennia, marked only by the slow, cyclical pulse of the hydrothermal vents they call home. Time itself would be a geological concept. In these hidden oceans, life would prove that it is not merely a child of the sun, but a fundamental property of chemistry and energy, a persistent force capable of taking root in the most profound and enduring darkness the universe has to offer. But for every world of endless night, the galaxy may hold its opposite, a planet bathed in the light of not one, but two suns. Let us now journey from the crushing dark to a world of perpetual, unblinking day. Imagine a planet in a stable orbit around a binary star system, a circumbinary world we might call a tattooing planet. Here, the very concept of night is a foreign one. The sky is a vast and complex clockwork, with two celestial fireballs tracing intricate paths across the heavens. Depending on their orbits, they might rise and set together, or one might be rising as the other is setting, creating a world where the dimmest it ever gets is a kind of perpetual, overlapping twilight. What kind of life could arise under such an unceasing gaze? The foundation of this ecosystem, the flora, would be unlike anything on Earth. Photosynthesis, the engine of life as we know it, would be supercharged. With a constant supply of energy, there would be no need to stop growing. Forests might consist of colossal, towering organisms, their growth limited only by gravity and the availability of nutrients in the soil. But the most striking feature would be their color. If the two suns were of different stellar types, say, a larger yellow G-type star like our own and a smaller, cooler red dwarf, plants would face a complex spectrum of light. To maximize their energy intake, they wouldn't specialize in a narrow band of the spectrum like the green chlorophyll on Earth. Instead, they might evolve pigments that absorb energy across almost all visible wavelengths. The foliage of this world would be a deep, light-swallowing black, or perhaps a shimmering, dark purple. Every surface would be a solar collector, optimized to drink in the relentless dual starlight, leaving no photon to waste. These plants would have no circadian rhythm as we understand it. Their metabolic cycles might instead be tied to the subtle shifts in temperature as the two suns moved across the sky, or to the changing quality of light as one star partially eclipses the other. For the animal life that evolved in this constant glare, the challenges and opportunities would be profound. The very distinction between diurnal and nocturnal would be meaningless. There is no cloak of darkness to hide predators or protect prey. Stealth would be a matter of camouflage, not shadow. Creatures might evolve incredible abilities to mimic their surroundings, changing their skin color and texture to blend in with the black foliage or the alien geology. Vision would be a paramount sense, but it would have to be adapted to overwhelming brightness. Eyes might be smaller, with pupils that can constrict to a microscopic pinhole. Perhaps many species would evolve multiple sets of eyelids, one of them a translucent nictitating membrane that acts as a built-in pair of sunglasses, filtering the harshest rays while still allowing the creature to see. But how would life on such a world sleep? Without the comforting blanket of night, rest becomes a dangerous vulnerability. Some creatures might retreat to deep caves or burrow underground, creating their own artificial night. Others might evolve the remarkable ability of unihemispheric sleep, shutting down one half of their brain at a time, while the other remains alert for danger, a trait seen in dolphins and some birds on Earth. Sleep might not be a long, consolidated period of rest, but rather a series of micro-naps taken throughout the day, a constant balancing act between the need for rest and the need for vigilance. The rhythms of life would not be dictated by a simple on-off switch of light and dark, but by the complex dance of its two suns. The day might have a peak of intensity when both suns are high in the sky, a time for basking or for hunkering down to avoid the heat. There might be a low day when one sun has set and the other is low on the horizon, a period of relative coolness and activity, the closest this world would ever come to a morning or an evening. The entire ecosystem would be locked into this more complex, multi-phase cycle, a symphony of life conducted by two stars instead of one. This stellar symphony would shape the very flora of the world, the silent, patient life forms that form the foundation of any ecosystem. Photosynthesis, the miraculous process of turning light into life, would be an exercise in extreme energy management. Plants wouldn't just be green. They might be a deep, shimmering black or a dark blood red, packed with pigments designed not only to capture the available light, but to shield the delicate cellular machinery from the relentless, overlapping UV radiation of two suns. These plants might not have static leaves. Instead, they could be modal, their foliage slowly twisting and turning throughout the day, angling themselves for optimal absorption during the cooler, low day, and turning their thin edges towards the sky during the peak, minimizing exposure and water loss. A vast, dark forest on such a world might appear to breathe, its billion leaves slowly tilting in a synchronized, planet-wide dance of survival against the glare. The sheer energy poured into this world's atmosphere would create a climate of extremes, a system running at a constant high temperature. Winds would be powerful and persistent, driven by the enormous temperature gradients created by the twin suns. Perhaps vast, continent-sized hurricanes would be permanent features of the landscape, spinning endlessly in the churning atmosphere. The low day would be a crucial period of respite, a planetary exhalation. As the light and heat lessen, the winds might calm, and the moisture held in the superheated air could finally condense, falling as a brief, intense rain or settling as a heavy dew on the dark, alien leaves. This fleeting period of moisture and relative calm would be the most important part of the cycle, the trigger for growth, for reproduction, for the very pulse of the planet's biosphere. And so, the entire food web would be a finely tuned instrument, playing its part in the two-sun concerto. The brief, dew-soaked low day might be when plants open their flowers or release their spores, relying on the calmer air for propagation. This, in turn, will be the time of frantic activity for herbivores, emerging to feed on the moisture-rich plants and drink from the temporary pools of condensation. And following them, of course, would be the predators, their senses honed not for the dark, but for the subtle shifts in the overwhelming light, for the slight change in a creature's camouflage as it moves against the landscape. Life here is not a battle against darkness, but a constant negotiation with an overabundance of light and energy, a world where the greatest challenge is finding a moment of shade, a moment of quiet, a moment of cool. But for every world of overwhelming light, there exists a potential counterpart, a world of profound and unending shadow, Let us now travel from the ceaseless glare of a binary star system to a place far more common in the galaxy, yet perhaps even more alien. Imagine a planet orbiting a single dim red dwarf star. These stars are the most numerous in the cosmos, but they are cool and faint. To stay warm enough for liquid water, a planet must orbit incredibly close, so close that the star's immense gravity locks it in place. This is tidal locking. The planet no longer spins relative to its star. One side is forever baked in perpetual daylight, a scorched and barren desert. The other side is locked in an eternal, frozen night, a wasteland of ice under a canopy of stars that never move. Life, if it exists here, cannot survive in these extremes. It is relegated to the border between them, a sliver of habitable territory known as the Terminator Zone. Here, in this ribbon of eternal twilight that wraps around the planet, the sun never rises and never sets. It hangs motionless on the horizon, a permanent, brooding red dawn or dusk. The light is weak, casting long, distorted shadows that have not moved in a billion years. The ground on one side of you is warm, heated by the distant star, while the ground on the other is perpetually frozen. This creates a colossal temperature gradient, which would give rise to relentless winds, a constant gale flowing from the hot, high-pressure day side to the cold, low-pressure night side. Life in the Terminator Zone would be a life lived in a perpetual storm, a world defined not by the cycle of day and night, but by the constant horizontal flow of energy. Plants, or their equivalents, would not reach for a sun that moves across the sky, but would instead grow low to the ground, perhaps leaning into the wind, their roots anchored deep in the rocky soil to resist the endless gale. Their sensory world would be one of scent and vibration, carried on that relentless wind. Sound, as we know it, would be largely drowned out by the low, constant moan of the atmosphere, a planetary hum that has never ceased. Instead, creatures might communicate through scents, releasing complex pheromones that are carried downwind to a potential mate or a rival. They would feel the world through their feet, sensing the subtle tremors of a predator's approach or the scurrying of small prey. Vision would be a different sense entirely. In the dim, ruby-hued light of the red dwarf, eyes would likely be enormous, black orbs designed to capture every possible photon. But perhaps more importantly, they might evolve to see in the infrared. In a world defined by a temperature gradient, the ability to see heat would be a profound advantage. A warm-blooded creature would glow against the cooling ground, a living beacon in the twilight. The world for them would not be a landscape of light and shadow, but a vibrant tapestry of infrared heat, of warm currents and cold pockets, a world painted in temperature. Life here would be a constant, delicate dance on the edge of oblivion. A few steps too far towards the day side, and you risk desiccation and radiation. A few steps too far into the night, and you face being flash frozen. The ecosystem would be stretched thin along this habitable band, a linear world rather than a spherical one. Migratory patterns would not be north to south, but a subtle east to west shuffle, following the most temperate bands as the planet's slight orbital eccentricities perhaps caused the Terminator to wobble over millennia. Predators might be ambush hunters, using the permanent, unmoving shadows of rock formations for cover, waiting for prey to wander into their path. Herbivores, in turn, would be perpetually cautious, their large eyes scanning not just the horizon, but the unmoving, billion-year-old shadows for any sign of danger. It would be a world of immense patience, where change is measured not in hours or days, but in geological time. And yet, is it possible that life could exist beyond this fragile ribbon of twilight? Let us turn our gaze to the immense frozen night side. Here, the sky is a fixed and brilliant starscape, unobscured by atmospheric haze, a celestial map that never changes. The ground is a solid sheet of ice, perhaps miles thick, with temperatures plunging to levels that would freeze nitrogen solid. It seems a place of absolute death. But what if deep beneath that ice, the planet is still geologically active? Tidal forces from a nearby star could be kneading the planet's core, keeping it molten. This internal heat could create hydrothermal vents on the floor of a subterranean ocean, an ocean that exists in total darkness, warmed not by its star, but by its own heart. Here, a second, entirely independent genesis could occur. Life that does not sip light, but instead dines on the raw chemical energy seeping from the planet's core. Chemosynthesis. Ecosystems of pale, translucent creatures might cluster around these vents, living and dying in a world that has never known a single photon of starlight, completely oblivious to the world of wind and twilight on the surface above. Even the scorched dayside, a seemingly hellish landscape of baked rock under the unblinking glare of the red sun, might harbor secrets. Life could exist beneath the surface, burrowing deep into the rock to escape the radiation and heat, forming complex microbial communities that have adapted to extreme temperatures. Or perhaps, in a truly alien turn, life here isn't based on carbon and water at all. In the extreme heat, could a silicon-based biology arise, with crystalline bodies that are perfectly suited to the furnace-like conditions? The wind, that ever-present force, could be the thread that connects these disparate worlds. It would carry spores and microbes from the Terminator zone, seeding the edges of the great ice sheet and the shadowed canyons of the dayside. Most would perish, but over eons, some might adapt, creating a truly global, albeit sparse, biosphere with three distinct and bizarre kingdoms: the life of the twilight, the life of the deep dark, and the life of the eternal fire. From a world perpetually divided between light and dark, we now journey to a place that knows neither. A world without a dawn, without a sun to orbit at all. Imagine a planet cast out from its nascent solar system during a chaotic gravitational dance billions of years ago. A rogue planet, a cosmic orphan, adrift in the unending, cold blackness of interstellar space. Its surface is a realm of absolute midnight, a temperature of nearly absolute zero. There is no year, no day, only the silent, ceaseless passage through the void. It seems the most unlikely place for life in the universe. But the absence of a star does not necessarily mean the absence of energy. If this rogue world is large enough, a super-Earth or a gas giant with rocky moons, its own formation could have left it with a tremendously hot, radioactive core. It could be a world that generates its own heat from the inside out. This geothermal heartbeat, a slow and steady release of energy from the decay of radioactive elements deep within its core, would be the planet's lifeblood. On the surface, an ice sheet kilometers thick would act as a perfect insulator, trapping this precious heat and protecting whatever lies beneath from the vacuum of space. And beneath that ice, where the pressure is immense and the temperature rises above freezing, could lie the greatest secret of this wandering world: a global subterranean ocean of liquid water, a realm of crushing blackness, forever shielded from any star, yet warmed from below. It is here, in this seemingly featureless abyss, that the rules of biology would be rewritten. Without sunlight, photosynthesis is impossible. The entire concept of a food chain based on capturing stellar energy is meaningless. Instead, life would have to draw its power from the planet itself. Imagine hydrothermal vents, just like those found in the deepest trenches of Earth's oceans, but on a planetary scale. Fissures in the world's crust, venting superheated, mineral-rich water from the molten mantle into the cold ocean. These vents would be oases of chemical energy. Instead of photosynthesis, the foundation of life here would be chemosynthesis. Microbes would evolve to metabolize compounds like hydrogen sulfide, methane, and ammonia, harnessing the energy from chemical reactions to build their bodies. They would form thick, vibrant mats around these vents, a living tapestry of alien biochemistry carpeting the seafloor. These microbial communities would be the plants of this ecosystem, the primary producers in a world without a sun. From this foundation, a complex food web could arise. Strange, slow-moving grazers might feed on the microbial mats, while sleek, sightless predators could hunt them through the dark, navigating by sensing pressure changes or the faint electrical fields generated by their prey. In this eternal darkness, eyes would be a useless evolutionary extravagance. Senses would be oriented around chemistry, pressure, and sound. Organisms might develop incredibly sensitive chemoreceptors, tasting the water for the faintest hint of food or danger. They might evolve lateral line systems, like those of fish on Earth, to feel the subtle movements of others in the water, or even a form of biological sonar, using clicks and calls to paint a picture of their surroundings in the unending night. And perhaps, in a stunning display of convergent evolution, life would create its own light. Bioluminescence, not for sight, but for communication, for luring prey, or for startling predators, could turn pockets of this deep, dark ocean into silent, ghostly light shows. Imagine vast, gelatinous creatures drifting through the abyss, their bodies pulsing with cold, blue light, a silent conversation in a world that has never known a star. The pace of life here would be profoundly different. With a more limited energy budget than a sun-drenched world, evolution might proceed at a glacial pace. Creatures could be incredibly long-lived, their metabolisms tuned to conserve every last joule of energy, waiting patiently in the dark for their next meal. This entire biosphere, complex and diverse, would exist in complete isolation, its existence entirely dependent on the slow, steady decay of its world's own heart. It would be a self-contained universe, a testament to the tenacity of life, thriving in a place we would consider the most desolate corner of the cosmos. From a world warmed from within, a singular point of life in an ocean of cold, we now turn our gaze outward again to a system of almost unimaginable complexity and beauty. We leave the lonely wanderer behind and travel to a planet that knows not one sun, but two. A circumbinary planet caught in the intricate gravitational dance of a binary star system. Here, the sky is not a predictable canvas of day and night, but a dynamic stage for a celestial waltz. Two suns rise and set, sometimes together, sometimes apart, painting the landscape in shifting colors and casting double shadows that sweep across the terrain. The concepts of a day or a year become far more complicated, governed not by one star, but by the orbits of two stars around each other, and the planet's own wider orbit around their common center of mass. This cosmic ballet would create an environment of extremes, a world of profound challenges, and perhaps of unparalleled evolutionary opportunity.